have time. I can't even finish this conversation.
We can split it in 2 podcasts.
Oh, my gosh.
Keep going.
Hi, I'm Finn. And I'm Sawyer. And you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
Okay.
Feels like spring outside.
Oh my goodness. It's wonderful.
It feels like, you can feel that spring's coming.
You can feel the
That's
sloshing
the kind
of melted snow saturating a ground that's thawing out.
Everything's sopping wet.
Sopping wet. I love it.
But the sun is out. It's amazing. The house is heating up, and it's not just because it's burning
Oil.
gallons and gallons of oil.
Right.
So it's the little things at this point that I'm just grateful for.
I'll take it.
I'll tell you what. The other big thing is, what's the date today?
26th.
Today's the 26th, but this podcast
It's going to come out on the 28th.
on the what? On the 28th, which means that tomorrow, if you're listening to this now, tomorrow is open enrollment at King's Academy.
Hey.
So I'm thinking of that. That's fresh in my mind because I just finished my re-enrollment packets.
And survey says
they're done. They're registered. All 4 kids are coming back to King's next year.
That's assuming they get accepted.
They're already accepted. It's re-enrollment.
I know, but they tell you that, but then they're like, you've got a bad egg. Sorry.
That's true.
We
You never
might have
know.
a couple.
Lord willing. But yeah, so if you had been looking into King's Academy, I would say open enrollment.
And we know
there are
people who
classes
listen to this
waiting list.
podcast do. You are looking.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, yes, some classes are totally full, but there are a number that aren't. So
Yeah. I don't know what the kindergarten class is looking like. I know there's some spots in the high school.
Yeah.
It's always elementary, middle. That's the hardest.
Full.
Yeah. But get your name on there.
Yeah.
And I know people have asked this over and over and over again. It's not just calling and letting them know you want to come. It's filling out an application.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think
getting on
it
the
costs
waiting list.
$20. Yeah, it's like $25 or something to get your kid on the waiting list, and to me, that's worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would do that with all 4 of our kids if it meant I could get them in here. So
Yeah. So I'm excited. But
Absolutely.
it also starts if you're the planner, the family planner, the family CEO.
Yep.
It also starts you going down those paths of, oh my gosh, summer's coming. What do we have coming up? I start going through all of this spring, summer.
Yeah.
What needs to be booked? What needs to be paid for? Because it can be so expensive, especially when you have multiple kids.
Right.
Getting camp fees and different programs that they're participating in. I know we're just finishing the United has snow camp coming up, so paying for that and just a lot going on, but a lot of fun things this spring. Looking forward to the spring. We just started the Speedway Ministries, and I think that's very cool.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be awesome.
That's a whole group
It's going to be a great summer.
of guys and girls that just really feel like a heart for Seekonk Speedway, and which is kind of the local racetrack, and they do demo derbies and thrill events and all sorts of fun things over there. So HPC's starting a ministry out there with a group of folks. So
car. Can you do that? I don't know
you
that.
got a fast car.
Oh, it's low like that. Is that the Luke Combs? Luke Combs redid it. Who did the original one?
I don't know.
Who did it? Somebody.
Maybe Melissa. What's her name? The one who sings really low.
No. Etheridge? No, I don't think so. I don't even know. I've been listening to too much of the kids' country, and it's just the Luke Combs version. But
Anyway, all to say, I think that's very fun. That's going to be a cool thing, especially over the summer, because they're going to be out at events like the July 4th event, and I think there's a Memorial Day one. So lots of fun things there. We have Easter. Saturday night and Sunday morning services for Easter this year. So mark your calendar, HPCers and friends,
Right.
for that. What else? Lots of things. We have the Beth Moore simulcast.
Right.
Simulcast. The Beth Moore live event. Beth Moore
yeah.
live event. She's going to be here at the end of June.
She's coming in.
Yeah, so a lot of great things. And speaking of Beth Moore, this podcast that you're going to listen to today is the second part
of us oversharing from last week.
Oversharing from last week. So it's going to be part 2.
I mean, we went long. It was over an hour, that podcast. So
I'd like to say this. I listen to a lot of podcasts that are over an hour.
Our precious producer, Ben. I know, but I think our kind of podcast.
I have a long attention span.
But you listen to the murder mystery podcasts that are over an hour.
I do not.
Yeah, the crime podcasts.
No.
We have heard from some people that they just shut it off after 20-something minutes or whatever it is. I don't know. We think that the 30 to 40-minute thing is good because then you can start it on your commute to work and then finish it on your way home.
Is that what you think?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't even know who goes to work anymore, to be honest with you. I wonder that sometimes.
I think this is where we should stop oversharing at this point. And just say, enjoy part 2 of last week's podcast.
Yeah,
and we'll see you next Friday on Our House. I kind of wanted to touch on this for a broader audience, and that is everybody knows we've advertised it on here, we're advertising it at church, that we have Beth Moore coming here live, doing a weekend conference here at the church. For as long as I've known who Beth Moore is, I have loved Beth Moore. Not as much as my mom has loved Beth Moore, but I've always loved Beth Moore.
I don't know if anybody loves her as much as your mom.
As much as my mom.
Except God.
She has just been like an instrumental part of so many women's biblical knowledge and growth that we've known, whether it was the church prior to this one starting. I mean, we're talking about probably 30 years at this point of like Beth Moore Bible studies that we've participated in. I've seen her live like multiple times. I've been to lots of simulcasts, done the Bible studies, all of the stuff, followed on social media. And in the last couple years, she, like so many others, has come under extreme fire. Again, like so many others. And she has been one of those, I don't want to use the word casualties because I don't think it's casualty, but it's been one of the people that has been like villainized, cut off, canceled by Christians.
Canceled by Christians. That should be another good
canceled
podcast.
By Christians. And I want to talk about that because we've had a lot of people since we started advertising that she's coming to HPC. Again, okay, let me clarify. I don't want to say a lot. We've had a handful.
It feels like
people,
a lot because
but it's not a lot.
That's not usually what happens here. It feels like a lot because we don't have like a really controversial lineup of
I mean, you have
speakers.
the people that are just like the internet trolls that are like Googling Beth Moore, and anytime they see Beth Moore's name come up anywhere, they're just like making some sort of comment underneath. They're like, do your homework, HPC, read this article.
Well, I think a lot of the people who are writing in actually have genuine concerns. A lot of them come from a more Baptist like background where.
Not a lot of people that are writing in. Maybe I would say less than a dozen people we've heard from.
I think
so that's not a lot.
I think some of it comes from a camp, a school of thought that has genuine, they have issues with Beth Moore. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's just because they saw it online somewhere. I think they share in the same belief or conviction. I mean,
but so the first thing is that she's a woman in ministry. Okay, so you have people that, I mean, I want to say maybe it was 15 years ago-ish when it was like she was preaching in front of men and to men at conference, whatever, and you had this whole group that was like, oh, now she's overstepped the line. She only used to do ministry to women, and now because she ministered to men, like we're cutting her off. Yeah. And you had a lot of churches at that point that were like, now none of you women are allowed to listen to her anymore because she's overstepped on what we believe.
And we tell you who you can and can't listen to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's like part of it. It's like, okay, so that's the extreme thing, and we're going to say like she's cut off. So you had that group where it was like once she preached in front of men. So again, here at HPC, that's not what we believe.
Right.
We do believe that women have gifts that the Lord has given because the Lord gave gifts equally amongst men and women.
Yeah.
So
well, I think we should address these one at a time.
Okay.
So I was talking to somebody about this recently who shares that conviction of like, well, the Bible says this, like women should remain quiet in churches. Mm-hmm. There's like so many weird things with that I feel like you have to be so legalistic to really hold to that.
Yeah.
Somebody else I've talked to said, well, I can receive from a woman Bible teacher on like, let's say a DVD series in a home group, but I can't in church on a Sunday morning. I'm like, well, why is that? Even the home group is mixed gender. So there's men there. Well, because it's not the corporate, well, no, it is church because it's the church.
Right.
Just in a smaller church.
Yep.
And I just feel like there's some sacredizing of the pulpit or something on a Sunday morning that is like, that's not the Lord.
Yeah.
Now, if you're somebody who says, well, I can't receive from a woman at all, I would just say, okay, well, if you agree that the church is like a family, right, which is presented as, you have a spiritual father, nobody has a problem receiving from the spiritual father. But I want to ask people as like sons and daughters, did anybody as like a son receive from their mother or no? Like when you grew up, I'm thinking of my boys right now. They probably have received until like the last few years, they got 90% of everything from you. And it's like, I'm hoping that for as long as they live, while they can still call me father and you mother, they can still receive from you.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is so weird. And what it is it is a world, a culture that is out of order.
Yeah.
Because if you're in order, there's no fear in you to receive from a woman.
Yeah.
It does not mean she's your spiritual covering or spiritual authority.
Right.
Now, people ask, what about women pastors? I believe that women may have the gift of like shepherding. I do not believe that a woman should ever be a man's pastor from the sense of spiritual authority and covering. I think that is out of order.
I think covering and spiritual authority, I see as two different things a little bit. Because I would say, like, I think about growing up and, you know, I always had, like, you always had your pastor's wife and everything. And I always saw her as spiritual authority, like, regardless of, do you know what I mean? She was never, like, lording over anybody or authoritative by any means.
But you're also a woman.
Yeah. That's true.
And I feel like as a man, the most tremendous respect for that pastor's wife and love her to death and would honestly do pretty much anything she asked me to do. Would not call her my spiritual authority.
You wouldn't call her a spiritual authority?
I would call her a spiritual authority. I would not call her my spiritual authority. And this is specifically about men.
Okay.
Now, could I receive from her? Yes. Have I received tons of wisdom from her? Yes. I think she would be uncomfortable with me calling her my spiritual authority.
A spiritual authority in your life.
My spiritual authority.
What about a spiritual authority in your life? Because I don't think that there has to be
semantics a little bit.
I don't know, because I don't think saying like my spiritual authority, is that one person? Is there only one?
Well, I guess that's why I use the word covering, because I feel like for as long as she's operating under her husband's covering, for as long as she's in order biblically in her own life, when she speaks, it's with the authority of her husband behind her. I think when a woman comes out of that authority, if there's a Jezebel spirit on that woman, she is not operating in the order that God laid out for her home, where her husband is the priest, blah, blah, blah. I think then, and I've talked to people. In fact, I was talking with a young man recently, and he was sharing that he was at a church where the woman and man co-led the church, co-pastored or whatever, like equally. There was a point where the guy got up and gave announcements, and he watched this happen. His wife had grown up going to this church or something. He watched the woman pass the baby to the man and get up and preach. And he said, I just had this weird, sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. And he attributed that to, well, because there's a woman pastor. And I said, I want to challenge you on that. I said, I don't think your issue was that a woman got up and preached. I think what you were discerning and sensing is that that was out of order, that their home, their marriage, that you sensed a spiritual thing that was not okay. And I think that that is where the problem is.
You're just saying that there was something deeper than...
Yeah.
I mean, because there's nothing wrong with like a wife passing
preaching.
her baby to her husband
not
and being
at all.
like...
and how many times and I said... You could see that a million more times and never have an issue with it. You could see that a million more times. It's the fact that in that setting, you were picking up on something else. And I think that is what we need to be sensitive to, is the deeper thing. Beth Moore is somebody who has always talked about her husband being her spiritual head, who she's always honored like spiritual authority and never placed herself. Now, whether or not other people do it, that's not
right.
Like she can tell them not to and they can still do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that can't be on her.
Exactly.
There is a big difference to me than...
And she's always been part of a local church. She's never been this rogue entity that like, it's because I can't submit to anybody. Always had a pastor.
Right.
Like always ministered underneath.
Well, that's another problem people have with her, is that the whole Anglican thing, which
well,
is
no,
so
I'm just saying.
ridiculous.
But I'm saying from non-denominational, she was in the Southern Baptist Church forever, and then was non-denominational, and recently has gone to the Anglican Church. But regardless, has always been a part of ministering under somebody else's leadership.
Correct. Submitting to it.
Where you have tons of leaders all over that are like, no, I can't even go to a local church because they don't want to submit to anybody's authority.
Right.
So, I mean,
God.
that just
So many
goes
people.
against the argument of her wanting to be this head honcho
rogue,
where I just minister to everybody and I don't receive from anybody and have no authority. 100% wrong.
Right. Right.
We haven't even gotten to the other two things.
Well, let's
the
get
other
to
things
them.
we wanted to
Let's
get to.
No, I think it's good. I think we should revisit that stuff every once in a while, because I think people are trying to figure it out. And we have a really eclectic church here. This is not the Bible Belt. There's like a lot of people who don't understand.
I know there are things even in the last conversation we just had that I think need to be developed more, but I don't think we have time for.
No, we have time.
We don't have time. I can't even finish this conversation.
We can split it in 2 podcasts.
Oh, my
It's fine.
gosh.
Keep going. We're on it.
Are we going to go back to the men and women in ministry? Women in ministry? Oh, my gosh. I just wanted to...
If you want to. I'm done talking about it. But.
It's not that I want to go back to it. I just want to clarify. I expect anybody within our church family that if any of our pastors or their spouses are like communicating to them, that there's a level of honor that needs to be like, not in a religious honoring way, but if you're going to say, because I want to try to bring some clarity to what you were just saying, because I feel like it can be a little bit misleading where it's like, well, she's operating under her husband's spiritual authority, but she's not my spiritual authority like her husband is, so I can disregard what she has to say or be a jerk because that's not my spiritual authority and not honor the role. And that's what I don't want to like miscommunicate.
But who would interpret that?
I think culturally there's a big problem with honor.
There absolutely is, but here's the deal. If somebody did that to you and be like, well, you're just the wife, so I'm not going to honor you, then they would
which people absolutely do.
Then they would have a big problem with me.
I know, but I think
I can only think of like one or two cases in all of this where I've had to like confront somebody and be like, no, you're going to honor my wife.
There's always things like, there's like the subtle things. Like I could communicate something and it would be like, they'll go around and then go to you directly and ask the same thing or question. And it's
think that, but honestly,
because you're not getting the answer you want.
But if they got the wrong answer from me, they'd go to you. So that's not just because you're a woman and I'm a man. It's because
I don't think that's true.
They're going after the answer they want. And if I was the no person and you were the yes person, then they would say to me, then they would not get what they want, and then they'd go to you. That's just people
I don't know.
trying to figure out how to. That's not a sexist thing.
Maybe.
I don't think. Maybe for somebody. You got to honor your leadership, and that includes their wives. Like everybody in our leadership, our wives are part of our ministries. We don't have a church where like the pastor's wife stays home on Sundays.
I know, but you do see like I feel like you do see it. You see the kind of push the wife to the side. I got to get to the guy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But if you were the senior pastor, they would push me aside to get to you. That's all about who's the senior leader.
I don't know.
Because a lot of those people are just obsessed with leadership, period. They're not actually caring what the gender is of the leadership.
No, I do think there are different levels of like honor and dishonor. I mean, one of our pastor's wives just recently has like multiple kids and respectfully asked somebody to wait on a conversation to have with her husband because it wasn't a good time for their family and was completely disregarded. And that person just went straight to the husband. And she was like super hurt because she felt like, wow, like she saw the situation that I was in and knew I was under like a lot and had a lot going on like personally and completely disregarded what I had to say for the sake of our family. She's like, I even said it with her family. And this is not somebody who's really like a needy or difficult or emotional person and felt like completely railroaded and pushed it. It's like not respecting like the wife's role or like what the wife is doing and it's like because I have to say what I need to say to the man of God.
But that's true whether or not the woman is in ministry or in leadership. Anyway, like that's not a women in ministry question. That's like just respecting this person's family and boundaries, because that wife may not have had any role or position here.
Right.
But
totally.
That's just a big problem with culture and selfishness. I don't think that has to do with gender. I think the guy could have had the kids and respectfully asked the person to hold off, but the woman was in charge of whatever it was, the event that's being planned. And so it's like, no, I'm going to go do it anyway because people are just self-consumed and could give two craps about anybody else. So
yeah. And that's that.
Okay, on to the next Beth Moore thing that we want to dismantle.
The next thing we need to dismantle is how do you feel about being able to hear from God? Can you hear from God today?
Oh, well, I know I can. But I am
the chosen one.
By the way, I'm not we have other people.
Somebody's definitely cutting and clipping that.
Oh, I know, for sure.
You're done.
Oh, my
Wait
gosh.
till you're going to get canceled.
Yeah. Ben, can you delete that? Just beep that out so it can't be misused in subsequent.
There's nothing else you've ever said that can't be misused.
No, that's the first thing I've ever said. No, I do believe that. And ironically, a lot of the material that we were sent with the whole like concern of hosting Beth Moore.
Like don't host Beth Moore because
this is what's crazy. Like the number one thing is like she says she can hear from God.
Yep.
She says she receives direct revelation. It's like welcome to HPC. Welcome to like all of Pentecostalism. Like this is like what we believe is that the Lord is still speaking and moving. We do not believe, and Beth Moore does not believe that, and she can correct me when she gets here if I'm wrong. She does not believe that what she receives is equal to Scripture, that it is inerrant or infallible or the final authoritative or an addition to Scripture. She believes that the Lord gives her distinct things for like that day, like the people in that room. It's words of knowledge or it's words of wisdom. It's like what the Holy Spirit is here to do. So if you are denying the role of the Holy Spirit as described in the New Testament church, then yes, you will have a problem with Beth Moore.
Right. So that's number 2. That was an easy one.
That's stupid.
That's an easy one to clear up. But
why would you even come to this church if you didn't believe in hearing from God?
That's the thing that's very bizarre to me. But again, that's why I feel like so much of it is internet trolls that like see this stuff and they post that. They're like, look at this link and it's some
She says God told her to brush somebody's hair. It's like,
and they're like, she didn't even have a brush. How could the Holy Spirit have told her to brush somebody's hair if she didn't have a brush? It's like, I literally cannot with you.
Yeah,
no, I'm not doing this.
That's next level. That one's easy.
When you're posting things like that, what happens is it causes the, for lack of a better word, weaker vessels among us to go down the wrong paths of YouTube garbage. And also when
when you say weaker vessels, you don't mean that biblically like the women, because biblically the weaker vessel is just women.
I just used the wrong word.
Oh, okay. It's, weaker-minded people?
But it's like the newer believers, maybe. Like the people who are not as strong in their faith.
Sure.
That are newer to the faith and just don't have like all the foundational.
Did you say newer or neutered?
Have your pets spayed or neutered.
To the faith.
That don't have all the foundational beliefs that, all of that, where there's not a full understanding. And that causes doubt in people's mind that they can hear from the Lord. And so when people are posting stuff like that, there's a lot of us that can just brush it off and be like, this is ridiculous, but actually causes harm to a lot of new believers.
Right.
And so it ends up being just like dangerous stuff. So it's the women in ministry, number 1. It's the hearing from the Lord, number 2. And the third thing, I'm going to try to do this in this conversation without getting too like angry and frustrated. I'm just going to...
How are you feeling today? Are you feeling like that could be...
Like, is it a good idea to have this conversation today?
I feel
good.
Okay.
I feel like it's good. So a couple years ago, I want to say around 2020, with the last election, not the most recent one, but the 2020 election, Beth Moore had come out and said something. Again, I remember it then, but it was years ago now. I have not looked it up since. I've not Googled it and tried to figure out exactly what she said to crucify words and how did she say it. Something to the effect that she wasn't going to vote for Trump. She couldn't stand before the Lord, or she couldn't vote for Trump within her own spirit, couldn't come into agreement that that was the right thing to do. Whatever. That's their personal choice. Well, you had a lot of extremely conservative people at that point say, you're a horrible person because you couldn't vote for Trump.
Yeah.
So that must mean, number 1, that you're voting for somebody else, which, first of all, we don't know the answer to. We actually don't know if that's true. Number 2, like anybody who does not love Trump and worship the ground he walks on is anti-Jesus, which is another one of my soapboxes that I'm not going to stand on today, but that is a very frustrating mindset to me. And a lot of very conservative people at that point canceled her. In general, because how could we receive from anybody that doesn't love Trump?
Yeah.
And so more recently, I think that there was a period maybe like a couple years ago since that happened that she had said, I was wrong to even put my foot into the political battle. That's not what the Lord called me to. I should have never said it. Again, I don't want to put words in her mouth that she said or didn't say. But the understanding that I received was kind of like, didn't need to fight that fight. It wasn't the fight I was called to fight, and I need to stay focused on what the Lord's called me to.
Okay.
And has left it there and has kind of been like, if you try to like engage me on social media and you're doing that stuff, like I'm just gonna like block you because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm not gonna be like hoorahing anybody. I'm not gonna be anti anybody. I'm gonna stay focused on what the Lord's called me to. Great. More recently, like in the last month or so, Sean Foyt, who we've all really appreciated his like Let Us Worship thing. He's been going around the country and really like promoting worship, which has been great. Everybody's looked on that. He was, I'm pretty sure, out of Bethel. So, there's a comfortability level there. And he's been a very outspoken voice politically. And he's very in line with a right-wing conservative mentality, so people have really appreciated what he's doing. He had a post recently that we had a lot of feedback, and this is kind of the crux of why we wanted to talk about this on the podcast today. And it was kind of like an anti-Beth Moore, and any women who follow Beth Moore or have been under her discipleship or under her teaching. and it was extremely like critical of her and her ministry, and that it's like the downfall of Christian women today.
It was also pretty void of any evidentiary context. There wasn't really any tangibles. It was just sort of like
a name drop.
A weird association thing of like the women who attend her Bible studies are not voting conservatively. So therefore
it was
weird.
It was, again,
I listened to it and I was kind of like, I can't, and I don't have social media, but somebody let me listen. Somebody showed it to me.
Everybody was sending it to us. Everybody sent it to us.
But
I am not somebody who's going to cancel somebody because of something stupid that they said. Where I'm going to like, hey, there's a good chance a month from now they're going to be like, meh, I posted that. I was feeling emotional. I probably didn't need to.
And that's why I don't have social media.
And that's why you don't have social media.
Because nobody would go to our church anymore.
Oh my gosh,
Just
no.
kidding.
But people really took this to heart. It was like, this guy who I, P.S., don't actually know, but have followed on social media and have come to follow and trust. Now he has said something about Beth Moore, so it automatically must be.
It gives it credibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
That she's the one in the wrong. And this really frustrated me.
Okay.
Really frustrated me because it made me feel like, how are we not more mature than that? That we can hear people say, I mean, you're listening to people all the time on social media criticize other people. That's what social media is. We're criticizing this one that did something I don't like. I can't stand the government. I can't stand the president. I can't stand all the stuff we know. You're going to let us know all how you feel about every single political thing and every single person you're upset with. Blah, 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 blah. Why are we not more mature than that? That we see it and can't just like brush it off and be like,
I'll tell you why.
You know what? He must have had a bad day. Or like, hey.
Or maybe he stands by it.
Or maybe, listen, maybe he 100% stands by it.
We don't know that. We don't know that he doesn't.
Maybe he stands by it, but show me the evidence. Tell me.
Right.
What is it? Okay. I've listened to a lot of Beth Moore. I'd love to see, what have I missed in the last 30 years of Bible studies and seeing her? Have you ever gone to any of her? Have you ever heard her? Have you ever sat in a Bible study of hers? Have you ever sat under her teaching? Or are you just being critical because she doesn't like the president that you championed and went around the country championing? And that's
and by
the
the way,
problem
like
to me.
even her not liking him, even that is based on something from years ago too, that she's backpedaled from a little bit in her like statement making.
Maybe she didn't vote for him in the most recent election. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you what it is, and you can take this to the bank. I'll probably end up preaching, including this in a message pretty soon. When you want to go around and crucify people, okay, when that's like part of your thing is like, let me go. And by the way, there's like 1 million YouTubers and pastors and everybody else, and you want to villainize or, create an enemy. While you have a tangible enemy, you have to have a tangible God. So what happens is the people who are crucifying people whose enemy is flesh and blood instead of principalities of darkness, like Scripture tells us it to be, they also have to have a perfect. And here's the problem. People's perfects are not perfect.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say you're one of these people who you want to crucify Beth Moore. Your perfect might be John MacArthur, right? I'm just throwing out examples, right? You want to crucify
John MacArthur.
You want to crucify Kamala.
Yeah.
Your perfect might be Trump, right? You want to crucify, whoever. Just fill in the blank. It's always just moving around.
Yep.
But the problem is that you're making somebody else God, and you may not say that. You may not be conscious of that, but you have to do that in order to operate in this system. Tangible enemy, flesh and blood enemy, flesh and blood God. I have a flesh and blood perfect. And the issue with that is your perfect, whoever it is that you're modeling after, whoever it is that you've put up on a pedestal, whoever it is that you've said, this person cannot fail. So in this case, somebody who may have really never had an issue with Beth Moore, when Sean Foyt says something, wait a minute, Sean Foyt is infallible. Sean Foyt, no, everything else he said has been good.
Right.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Right.
That actually can't matter because he's not perfect. He's not a God.
And guess what? I would still, like Sean Foyt, I've seen enough from a distance that I would say we're probably close to being on the same page when it comes to like...
Yeah, maybe not exactly 100%, but I'm saying I agree with you 100%.
We're coming close.
Yeah.
Are there going to be some philosophical things? Of course. There's always going to be a couple things that you're not exactly the same on. Would we as a church welcome him in to share what he's been doing, what the Lord's done within his ministry? Of course. We had people down in North Carolina who led worship with him just recently after the hurricanes and had a great experience there.
Absolutely.
So absolutely. But I feel the exact same way about Beth Moore. Are we going to be 100% on every single thing? No, of course not.
Right.
Zach and I were just talking about this the other day. There are people on our staff that we are absolutely like in line with, doing ministry with, shoulder to shoulder. And guess what? Theologically, there are a couple of things that we'd be like, I believe differently on that. And you believe differently on that. Who the heck cares?
It's never stopped us. Yeah.
It's never stopped us. Are they salvific things? No, of course not. We're not going to like have somebody preaching heresy from the platform. We're also not going to invite somebody in to our pulpit here at the church that we haven't already done research on and know what their life is like, what their ministry has been like, the fruitfulness of their ministry and their life and their family before we're inviting them in.
Right.
So,
which, by the way, has always mattered more.
Has always mattered more. It's always mattered more. So I guess that is kind of what's like frustrating. And I know that the heart is like, hey, I'm just doing my due diligence in case there's something here that I missed. Like, HPC, do you know that this is a thing? But I just wanted some evidence to receive, like, hey, did you see this social media post? He didn't actually say anything.
Right.
He didn't say anything.
He was venting. Yeah.
He was venting. And P.S., we all have our platforms to vent on. Thank you, Our House A to Z. We have it. This is like, you can choose to listen to it or not. You can choose to say it's garbage, whatever. But I want to make sure like we're not throwing people out because of something somebody else said, and we're going to be more mature and like dig deeper into it and be like, oh, okay, like what was this about? And is there an actual real concern? And then I have the other side of that is, when do you say we're just protecting people against false teachers? Because there is that too. There is the aspect of like protecting people. And that's kind of why I said, as far as like our responsibility to this community and shepherding this community, we're not just going to let anybody come in and teach or preach here.
Which is why maybe our next episode will be on false teachers. But I think that wraps it up for Beth.
Oh, see, you always got to cut me off. You said I had time, and now you're saying I don't have time.
Well, I forgot
know
we have a meeting. Anyway, Lord help us. We can pick back up with this.
Help us.
But all that to say, Beth is not a false teacher.
She's not a false teacher.
Come on now.
And I feel like the people who are saying that are people who have never sat under her ministry.
And here's the judge, right? What does her fruit look like?
Yeah.
Like, how about thousands and thousands and thousands of people's lives changed?
Yeah.
How about that? For the gospel.
But
for
again,
the gospel.
And women in the word. Like, she literally causes women to dive into the word.
Okay, so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that.
It's not a fellowship of her.
That's so important. And now you got me going. See? But here's the deal, right? So we have seen so many women over the years do her Bible studies, go to her conferences, follow her ministry. And unlike some other big movement ministries and big leaders that I've seen, some of them gender specific, some not, they create followers of themselves.
Yeah.
It's like you go away on a conference, you go away on a retreat, you go away to a thing, and when you come back, all you can talk about is the thing.
Is the thing or the person.
When people do a Beth Moore Bible study or go to a Beth Moore conference, they come back talking about the word.
Yeah.
And to me, that is way more important.
And literally, that's how she prefaces everything. And she has said so many times, like, my calling is for you to fall in love with Jesus, for you to fall in love with his word, like, so that you are just, like, craving it and not, like, and just never talks about herself.
Amen.
It's never about herself and her ministry. So.
It's good.
Anyway.
How
did I do? Was I nice?
You were perfect, as always. Always perfect.
Sure,
not always nice, but always perfect. So, coming at you, not live, pre-recorded. Yeah, from
Guys,
here in
thank
Swansea.
you for stopping by
Our House
A to Z, and we'll see you next Friday here in Our House.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is Our House from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
Well, isn't that special?
Am I in danger?